Hello and welcome back to the Karma Stories podcast. I'm Rob and I hope you are having a wonderful day today. Today I was looking for a bit of a different subreddit, something we haven't covered in a while, and I stumbled across the YouKaren subreddit again. We've done this one a couple times here before and it had a pretty good response, so we're gonna try it again. If you're on YouTube or on Spotify, make sure you drop a comment on this episode and let me know how much you like this subreddit. Alright, on to the stories. Bring on the Karens! This story comes to us from Atlas Fox, entitled Family Wants to Harass Their Neighbors While on Vacation, but End Up Meeting Karma. So this isn't a story about one individual acting it up, but a family that decided that acting like public nuisances was the thing to do until it cost them. For some context, my sister told me and the rest of us this story a week ago during our holiday get-together. A couple other siblings knew something about it, and she was nice enough to elaborate on the results of what went down. For some context, one of my older sisters is super social. We have a small enough town so there isn't anyone she doesn't know about. To handle this though, she keeps her home life very separate from her social life. It's her husband, and 2 black labs. So she lives a ways out of town with only a few local neighbors. Otherwise, her neighbors are cabin owners who aren't usually around. As she puts it, it's a nice quiet place where a person can do what the F they want. The issue deals with the cabin immediately next door. The story starts in the spring of 2023. A family of 5 shows up at the cabin. At first, my sister said it was no big deal. She said it just looked like your typical suburbanites, 2 parents, 3 kids. The issue started when brother-in-law started to find trash in the yard somewhere a week or so in. Things like candy wrappers, frozen treat trash, the kind of stuff you can get out of a gas station cooler. Understand, my brother-in-law and my sister take pride in their clean yard. The dogs are very well behaved, and a part of that is having a space they can play that's safe. So when brother-in-law found the trash, he wasn't too happy. At first, he didn't know who was doing it, until he noticed 2 boys on bikes riding down the road. They were eating stuff and casually tossing the trash as they went. He first actually walked down to their nearest local neighbor. They are a retired elderly couple, and he asked them about the trash. They explained they had seen the boys and occasionally an older girl with food walking down the road, tossing things into the ditch. So brother-in-law, content with this shorthand investigation, decided to talk to the source. He walked over to the cabin in question and knocked. A guy, probably maybe 10 years younger, opened the door. Brother-in-law described him like some cheap car salesman type. We'll call this guy Kevin for the sake of theme. Brother-in-law kindly brought up the trash and explained that he had dogs, and due to being afraid that they may get a hold of something that might make them sick if their kids could not toss the trash around the neighborhood. This dude tried to argue, insisting that brother-in-law should just keep the dogs leashed and it's not his fault what happens, or at least something along those lines. Before brother-in-law could say anything, Kevin closed the door, and the last thing brother-in-law heard from the other side was laughter and the word hick being tossed around. Now, my brother-in-law is a surprisingly chill guy. He knows when to pick a fight, so he chose to stay chill. That night, he explained what happened to my sister after she got home from work. She wanted to kick some tail, but brother-in-law talked her down. Things started to get a little more interesting a few days later when brother-in-law started noticing a lot more trash on his yard, like deeper in. As in, there was no way this got here unless it was tossed intentionally. So brother-in-law decides to talk to them again. He walks over, knocks, and gets the entitled Kevin again. From what my sister said, he told off brother-in-law that it's not something they give a crap about, and that they have seen their dogs off leash, plus that brother-in-law and my sister were just hicks. So after getting the door slammed in his face, brother-in-law is starting to think of ways to handle this issue. But Kevin and his wife Karen tried beating him to the punch because of what happened. The next day, my sister came home and a cop was there. My sister knew the cop and they sat down. The officer said that they got a call about a dog attack. My sister had to have a laugh at that one. Why? Because my sister takes the dogs with her every day to work. She works as the appointment coordinator and secretary for a small privately owned landscaping company. Unless brother-in-law is off, the dogs are with her. The report was from earlier that day when no one would have been home. After confirming with my sister that no, the dogs did not run home, attack some kid, and then run back, then explaining the issues with the people staying at the cabin, the cop decided to talk further with the people who called in. Later, my sister found out that they only got a warning, but the cop straight up told them that they were visitors and disturbing the residents was not a good idea. So for a couple of months, things quieted down. It seemed like the tiff was done, until our entitled vacationers started having parties. Now, the parties weren't loud, they seemed civil, but 2 weeks after the party started, a trash bag was dumped into my sister's yard. My sister found it while out on the deck. It was still fairly early in the morning, sitting next to the driveway. She wasn't sure what happened, so moved it into a bin and waited for brother-in-law. She told him what she found, and he decided to start setting up trail cams. He had a few left over from his days of hunting, figuring if it was Kevin and his family or some rando one-off, at least they would know soon. After setting them up, it didn't take long. He caught 2 really nice videos of one of the 2 boys and then their daughter dumping trash into the yard. Brother-in-law called the police and let them see what he caught on video. They couldn't get them on the trash before this, but they got 2 nice-sized fines for littering. My sister thinks the fines total had to be close to $550. After this, you would think this group of entitled vacationers would attempt revenge, but because the season was going to close soon, they must have decided to cut their losses because they left. One day, and poof. Turns out they had their own plans. My sister said it was good riddance, and for the winter, things were quiet like they would be normally. Things didn't stay that way. You would think people would learn or at least grow up a little, but my sister said this last spring, they showed up again. This time, they were ready for a long haul. This time, they had toys like a boat, 2 jet skis, and a couple of motorbikes. My sister and brother-in-law decided, okay, like it was whatever, but just in case brother-in-law set up his cameras again to make sure. So what happened was, instead of throwing trash around, it seemed like these people really decided to become a menace in other ways. The boys would ride their motorbikes early in the day up and down the road, revving and racing. For my sister and brother-in-law, they wouldn't be home because they work early, but my sister found out after the fact the elderly couple down the street tried calling the cops for a disturbance a couple of times. The thing was, Kevin and Karen knew what they were doing. They avoided my sister's place. The fact it's the first house on the road made it easy, figuring on cameras, and the bikes were legal. These buttholes would take out their water toys on the weekend, but during the week would do their best to be obnoxious. Then, if the cops showed up, it was their word versus the callers. My sister said they were definitely trying. Besides the noise during this time, my sister said that these people were starting to pile up on their trash. Instead of taking it out, it started to pile up in the back. This caused other issues, particularly a pest issue. Raccoons and skunks started poking around digging into the trash pile. Then the bags were torn open and trash would be tossed about. My sister said that after a while, Kevin and his wife Karen would end up arguing about it. Then, in a day or two, the trash would be gone. Every month, this crap kept going on. The kids were a loud nuisance, the parents did their own thing. Eventually, starting in July, they started to have parties again. The parties were loud too, much louder than before. My sister found out the couple had made some local friends on their weekend escapades and had been talking crap. Seemed like the pair had worked their way into the rougher snobs of the town. And man, were they all trashy. All in all, these parties had the cops called on them about 5 times. In the first few cases, they got a warning, then they started to get fines, but these people just didn't care. There was never any underage drinking found, but it was just stupid unreal. As my other sister said when we were told all this, these were people on a mission. But oh, did it backfire. My sister said the issues with trash just got worse. Yes, they would eventually pick it up, but man did crap stink beforehand. The piles and what kind of trash changed from maybe your everyday stuff to party fodder. Old beer cans, discarded food, just rotten. Anyone who knows what this does. Then, one bright and wonderful fall day in early September, it happened. As my sister put it was fun. She came home from work to see 2 squad cars and a nice-sized forestry truck parked outside. My sister decided, well, time to get the popcorn, so she sat out on her front porch with some tea and started to enjoy the fresh air with a show. She couldn't fully see what was happening because of the brush and trees that separated the two properties, but she could hear it. The couple were raving and ranting, their kids were crying. She said it kept going back and forth from woe is me sounds to let me yell some more noises. Eventually, one officer walked over. Apparently, the couple had called in a robbery and insisted that my sister and her hubby were destroying things. So, because they were mentioned, he had to at least talk with my sister. The cop was nice enough to give the details. So, Kevin and Karen decided to take themselves and the kids out for a nice lunch in town at one of the resorts. They ate, did a few things in town, and when they came back, they found the door on the patio smashed in. Trash everywhere, and they could hear noises like someone was grunting. They crowded back into their car and they called the cops, insisting their neighbors had broken in. But when the cops showed up, they didn't find my sister, her husband, or an overly irate elderly couple. Nope, it was a large black bear. At first, the couple refused to believe some animal broke in, insisting it was the Hicks next door, angry about how they were having a great vacation. That's how my sister told it, although she thinks more colorful language was probably used. The officer said they called the forestry service, and with some careful planning, including a well-placed dart, they got the bear out. The pair of butt hats just wouldn't stop. The officer explained how they kept trying to blame my sister and her husband, saying things like, they must have led the bear over, or they used bear bait, but the cop told them if anyone baited an animal, it was them. They may have gotten lucky not getting caught with their mishandling of their trash in the past, but they weren't this time. After my sister and officer talked for a few more moments, he left. An hour or so later, my brother-in-law got home and he was let in on what happened. She described things as if it was like watching a sinking ship. A cop stayed as the group came and went several times. After a while, the cop left and things went quiet. The next day, they were gone. Brother-in-law snuck over to take a look. Curiosity just got the better of him, or my sister did. They had boarded up the back door, but left all the trash. Taking a quick peek into a window, he saw a lot of damage. Cupboards broken into, a couch and chair torn into, the fridge torn up. It looked like Kevin and company did a minimal attempt to clean up, but must have given up. By what it seemed, this bear had a day. Later on, from her usual poking around, my sister found out these people were renting for the season, a common thing people do in my area. The actual owners had no clue how their tenants were acting, being as they live a state away without a care in the world. Kevin and Karen got in trouble for the trash, for illegal bear baiting, because yes folks, leaving trash out that causes a dangerous wild animal to break into your home or other homes is a big no-no. Then, to top it off, the owner of the cabin is suing for damages as well. Considering the fines they got that summer, all in an attempt to annoy the Hicks, really ended up costing them more than a few dollars. This time, as my sister put it, justice was served by a black bear she named Karma. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Texas Frybaby. It says, "We love a bear named Karma." OP responded to this and said, "One of my other sisters, I have 3, said we should get my older sister this happened to a stuffed bear with the name tag Karma. Beware the Karma Bear." Another commenter down below called the Dark Helmet 1985 said, "Gosh, I really love reading stories like this. It is always a good feeling watching true buttholes get their just desserts." So, OP, could you say that these temporary neighbors there had the bare minimum IQ required to rent the place? One thing that got me wondering in this one was why the neighbors didn't have the actual homeowner's phone number. Like, if you're living out of state and you have a property that you can't take care of personally, you'd think that you would give your phone number to the neighbors so they could call you and tell you if it's burning down, or if somebody that you're renting it to is causing a nuisance and damage to your property. I guess that just wasn't done in this case. I love the mention of the Karma Bear in this though at the end. Do you think we should maybe make a little bear companion for our Carmen Chameleon? The bear doesn't need cookies, but it could have some trash bags. This story comes to us from Puzzled Geekery. Must be nice to be able to afford that. There's a woman living in my apartment building that has decided to snark at me every time I see her. I don't know if she treats others this way because all of our interactions are from our parking garage spots to the elevators. Anytime I have a bag of groceries or takeout and she and I are walking to the elevator, she says, "Must be nice to be able to afford that," in the snottiest almost snarl. The first time this happened, I looked at her and said, "You can't buy a load of bread?" "Of course I can, I'm just concerned for your health, that's all." Maybe start with that concern then, rather than getting snarky about my finances. I have been fat since I was in 3rd grade. I overheard my doctor tell Mom that she should put me on a diet. Mom said, "It's his own fault and I'm not going to do anything special for him." Mom was controlling and always about the shame and blame. I went from being a slim child in kindergarten to 103 pounds when I started 3rd grade, 225 in grade 10, 250 at the end of high school, 370 when I was 44. Therapy and weight loss programs came next. Now I am 265 at 56 and still getting it down slowly. This woman's accosting me in this post context sounds like my mother, both in the shaming snark and then fake caring. That doesn't help my appraisal of the Karen. This unwanted interaction has occurred 8 times in the last year. The only occurrences not being a harpy were when her partner was with her in the parking garage. Then she said nothing at all and was almost meek, except her side-eyeing me while her partner was leading to the elevator. I am glad I'm only 2 floors up from the garage. I still have no idea what makes her do this, although when I respond, she just stops and stares straight ahead, as if I wasn't there. My comments were snark about her opinion meaning nothing, or the quiet whisper when I told her I had been unemployed and had no money for several years. I was once very poor, so I enjoy being able to buy what I want now. The rest were just my head turning to look at her, then ignored her. Weirdly, she always said goodbye to me in a pleasant voice, and I replied in kind. Jumping down to the comment section on this one, we have one from a user called Hernandez Girl. It says, "Tell her, my life is not your concern. Mind your own business." OP responded and said, "When it happens again, I may say that. She hasn't been around so far in this year." Another commenter down below called Honor the Crones said, "Have you tried looking her right in the eyes and asking her WTF her problem is and why her mama didn't teach her manners?" OP responded and said, "Not yet. I haven't seen her recently." There were so many comments on this one for people suggesting what OP should say next time they see this Karen, and some of them were really good. Like, smile at her and say, "You know what, I envy people that don't know you." Or to just look her right in the eyes and say, "That's an odd thing to say," and then just move on with your day. I personally think that OP could have a lot more fun with this one, especially if they run into Karen and the husband again. I would confront Karen on that day and say, "Is there a reason why you don't like me? Have I done something to you? Why do you make comments towards me that are derogatory and defaming?" Maybe if it's brought up in front of her husband, things might change because they might have a talk about it. I mean, we don't know because we don't know the dynamic between them, but it's worth a shot. And OP, if that doesn't work, if you two are getting on the elevator together, you literally can do one thing to have fun with it and just press all the other buttons on the elevator and then jump back off saying, "Oh, I forgot something in my car." So Karen has to go to every single floor on the way up to hers. If you enjoyed daily Reddit stories, I encourage you to follow and give us a rating on your podcast platform of choice. And if you're watching and listening on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button and drop a like on the video. It really helps us out. I thank you for watching and listening. I hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll see you tomorrow.